Hello and welcome back to the Morning Bulletin here on the Blood Red channel. I'm your host, Edward Kay. Joining me is Liverpool.com editor Matt Addison, and we are, of course, going to be previewing the Reds' upcoming clash at Stamford Bridge tonight. Obviously, focusing in on the Liverpool side of things, but I think we've probably got to start in the Chelsea dugout, haven't we, Matt? How did you feel when you found out Graham Potter had gone, and are you sort of fearful of the new manager, no manager bounce?
I think it's a really interesting situation with Chelsea because I think most of us would have normally expected that to happen. The results that they've got, they're in the bottom half of the table. They're not really scoring any goals. They've not managed to get the most out of that squad. It is very Chelsea, isn't it? But what Todd Boehly has said all the way through his time, he spent a load of money and he said he would give Graham Potter time. And I think it's been, 5-6 months at the most that he's been there. I think there was obviously the World Cup break in there, so he's not had that many matches. I think it's 22, 23 games that he oversaw, and he'd obviously got them through in the Champions League. And you could really have seen he got to the end of the season, they kind of reassessed then, and maybe then a change happened. But I think that the fact that it came so quick is slightly surprising. I think it's slightly surprising that there's not really an obvious option that seems to be available to them to go and get right now. I think possibly in the summer there might be a good number of options available. I think Nagelsmann makes a lot of sense for them, but from the things that I've read and sort of heard over the last couple of days around it, it seems to be the case that he would want to wait until the summer and not come in straight away. But I don't know, it's just such a weird job, isn't it? They've got to get, I think, this managerial appointment right. They've already got rid of Tuchel, who I think was clearly a much better fit for them than what Graham Potter was. They've now got rid of Graham Potter, which kind of feels a little bit Brendan Rodgers-y. Maybe come to a big club slightly too soon in his career. Possibly, might have to take a bit of a step back to go, to take the next step and go forward for him. But I just don't know who would look at that job and think that it was appealing. I don't know which manager out there would look at that and think that with the huge number of players, the weird sort of structure of the squad, they've got, 2 quality left backs, they've got loads of number 10s, they've got players who play in a system that they don't really play, but they haven't got a number 9. The goalkeeper isn't particularly brilliant. They've got a bit of a lack of centre backs, really. It's a bit of a mismatch of a squad, and I think that's why, obviously, the manager plays some part in that, but I think that's why Liverpool have got a decent chance of turning up and winning tonight. If Aston Villa can do it at the weekend, then certainly Liverpool can do it today. But it's just so hard to know what Chelsea will turn up. They've got quality, they can score goals, they've got so many good players. I think João Felix has been brilliant since he came in. I think he looks a real threat, and I think he will cause Liverpool a lot of problems. But yeah, like I say, you just look at the squad and there's so many holes in it. They spent 600 million or so, and I think they're at best the same level as what they were at the start of that. So yeah, in terms of tonight's game, will there be a new manager bounce? Potentially, but I just don't think that Chelsea squad is particularly good. And obviously we know Liverpool have struggled, but if Liverpool can go there and just try and do sensible things, don't give away a goal immediately after half time, don't have Trent bombing down the left wing and then going to press the goalkeeper when there's huge gaps behind him. I think if Liverpool can do the sensible things, there will be chances, there will be opportunities, and it will be interesting to see what Chelsea turns up tonight. But I don't think they will suddenly now be fixed. I just think their squad is just far too flawed for that to be the case.
Yeah, you saw sort of, I don't know if you watched the Spurs-Everton game last night, but I think everybody was sort of expecting a big reaction from Spurs and just didn't really get it from that squad of players. I wonder if we'll see the same from Chelsea tonight. I felt a bit sorry for Graham Potter, really. I think like a lot of people, I just never really saw that one working out. It seemed like the sort of job that was going to eat him alive, really. Listening to him in press conferences, he didn't ever really sound like a Chelsea manager. But obviously, Liverpool fans probably fairly confident going into this one with Graham Potter as the Chelsea manager, given how lacklustre they were. Obviously, he's now gone. Bruno Saltor, who was there under Potter before, steps in. So, I mean, how much of an unknown quantity are you expecting Chelsea to be tonight, given that it's still sort of a very similar manager in charge?
Yeah, I think that the Tottenham comparison is a good one. I think we've seen, obviously, Conte is gone, but Stellini and the rest of the backroom team are essentially still there. It's still very much, the same players, the same coach, the same way of playing. They played the same formation. They still had that same front three last night. And obviously, it's not just a quick fix to get rid of one person and suddenly the rest of it looks absolutely perfect. So, yeah, it's hard to know exactly which version of Chelsea will turn up. It's hard to know really in terms of sort of what they can do any different. I think you'd look at some of the players that I mentioned before. They've got so many sort of creative attacking midfielders and that sort of thing. But, it's not the case that if you took out Havertz and Felix and brought in Mason Mount and Christian Pulisic, that they would necessarily be that much better than those players. It's more just a case of trying to find a system where you can fit them all in. There's so many of them that it's just not possible. I think it's going to be a weird end to the season for Chelsea. I think there's been sort of talk of could they go on and win the Champions League? Could they save the season in that sort of way? I just think they've just got to get through to the summer, try and get rid of a few players and just try and start again, really, which is not a great sign when you've just spent so much money in 2 transfer windows to say that you just need to start from scratch and go again. But yeah, I think Liverpool have got to prepare for basically the Chelsea that we've seen so far this season. Obviously, the Chelsea we've seen and the Liverpool we've seen, who knows, which version of both. They've both been really, really inconsistent. But I think we'll probably see changes from Liverpool as well. So that will be interesting to see kind of how they line up. And it's just, I think it's a little bit unfortunate for Liverpool that this Chelsea game has been put in now, because if it wasn't between Manchester City and Arsenal, I think it'd maybe give them even more chance of going there and winning. But yeah, the combination of that and a little bit of uncertainty, I think makes it an intriguing one, but one that I think a few people will be a little bit nervous about for tonight.
Yeah, always nervous to be coming up against Chelsea, I think, whenever that is. But Jurgen Klopp saying in his press conference yesterday that obviously he's been sandwiched in the middle of that Manchester City tie and the game coming up with Arsenal. Jurgen Klopp saying to expect some changes. Where do you think that's going to come in his starting 11, Matt? Obviously, maybe switch one of Matip or Konate back in and out alongside Van Dijk, maybe a change in midfield, and then who do you think will start up front?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to know, isn't it? When he says changes, I don't know exactly what that means. I mean, there's maybe an argument to change it at left back. There's probably not to do it at right back, I would think. Maybe Milner could come into the midfield. You'd like to think that someone like Curtis Jones or Fabio Carvalho could be in contention for a game like this to come in, but neither of them were on the bench at the weekend. To me, that says that they won't be involved from the start here, but you never know. Maybe the plan all along was that Jones didn't play at the weekend so that he could come in tonight. I don't know. It's a hard one to predict really there. I think, Fabinho will probably have to play. Whether Jordan Henderson can play 3 in a week, I don't know. Would you then maybe prioritise the Anfield game on Sunday for him rather than this one potentially? But I just don't know. I don't know the logic as well of sort of Arthur Melo was on the bench at the weekend on Saturday when you thought he's never ever going to get on the pitch. Is he going to start? Almost certainly not. Is he going to get minutes? You'd think probably not. There just doesn't seem to be a route to him getting into the first team. So yes, the midfield probably needs changing, but I think James Milner is probably the only one that you could see sort of coming in. And would you then? I mean, it would be bold to go with a front 4. I think again. I liked the look of it in the first half, very much didn't like it in the second half. I think, Salah will obviously start. Cody Gakpo, I thought was decent. Diogo Jota was decent, but both of them kind of faded a bit in the second half. There is an argument to bring in Firmino, I think. But yeah, there's not many changes that you can bring in. I think Darwin Núñez will probably play. I think it was a little bit of a surprise that he didn't start the other night. So that'll be one that I think you would look at, but I think I'd be trying to make it a 3-man midfield. I wasn't a massive fan of the 4-2-3-1, and I think that will probably be the case again tonight, that Chelsea would get opportunities on the counter if Liverpool allowed them to do that. But yeah, I just don't know. I don't know whether they've got enough midfielders to be able to do that. So it'd be interesting, but I wouldn't expect wholesale changes. I think Liverpool have got too few options to make that the case. Maybe 2 or 3 changes, maybe 1 centre-back, 1 in midfield. Maybe you bring Milner in and maybe Firmino and Núñez. I mean, that's 4, isn't it? I'd be struggling to think it'd be more than that.
Yeah, I wanted to just touch on Jota before we finished. I don't know about you, Matt, but I don't think he looks the same player since he's come back. It's been a while since he scored, and he just looks like he's lost a bit of that. I want to say tenacity. He's just not quite as involved in games as he used to be. Really, but what are your thoughts on him since he's been back?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to assess all of these players. I think in a struggling team, I think. There's no two ways about it, though. He's not scored a goal for a year now. It's April last year against Manchester City was his last goal, so that's a bit of a tough one. But it's one of those where at some point it does have to turn. I think it probably will do. But I think for me, the way that I would assess him is he's obviously had injuries. He's not been able to have sort of full matches. I think he has played a good night. It's more than 20 games that he's played now across that period where he's not scored. Not all of them have been starts, and he's not been able to build that momentum. But I think he for me falls into a category of a few Liverpool players, really. I would probably put Trent in the same position. I would probably put maybe someone like even Van Dijk potentially in that position. I think it's one of those where when Liverpool are at their peak, that's when those players really come to the fore. But when Liverpool are maybe not having as much of the possession, maybe not creating as many chances, maybe not playing with the same confidence, I think all of those players, their style of play, the way, the things that they need to happen within a football match for them to be at their peak, I don't think is necessarily that level. I know Jamie Carragher got quite a bit of stick for saying that about Trent. Really, he's a player for, if you're going for the title, he's not maybe a player for chasing that top 4. I think there's a few players. I think Trent, that is definitely the case for, and I think it's probably the case for 1 or 2 others as well. That if Liverpool are functioning and the rest of the players around them are doing well, then they really are at their peak and they can be world class. But without the rest of the team functioning, suddenly it rubs off on 2 or 3 other players. I think Liverpool are in that kind of delicate position. Obviously, they've got so many specialist players. Trent is the obvious example, but I think Jota is a little bit of that kind of player that you can't think of too many players who are like Diogo Jota when he's at his absolute best. I think he's a player that is pretty unique. I don't think there's too many players that are similar to him, but yeah, it's one of those that when it works, it really works, but when it starts to unravel, it can really unravel very quickly. So maybe it will just take a goal for Jota to get back into that form. Maybe if he can, score the winner tonight and go on, and he loves playing against Arsenal, so maybe he can get a couple at the weekend. Maybe then we look at him in a different way. But yeah, I'm with you. I'm slightly worried by him, but I think for me the worry I think will be alleviated. When the rest of the team gets better, if they can have a full pre-season, they can get a proper midfield, buy a couple of players in the summer. I do think it will collectively get better. The worry is that the damage might then already be done.
Yeah, I think Thiago may be another player who fits into that category of player you're talking about, where when things are going well, he's sort of the jewel in the crown, but then when you're struggling, can look a bit vulnerable. But like you say, hopefully, if we do see Diogo Jota tonight, he will finally get that long-awaited goal. But remains to be seen what Liverpool side Jurgen Klopp will put out. We'll be hoping for the best. Matt, very quickly, are we still in the race for the top 4, do you think?
Yes, definitely. There's still enough inconsistent and relatively poor teams around Liverpool that will drop points. I think Manchester United are now in that race. I think it's maybe 5 teams into 2 places because of the result between Newcastle and United at the weekend. So yeah, there's still more than enough hope. Liverpool at some point just have to start winning a few games. I think I'm not 100% sure. I've not checked this, but I think I heard the other day that no team in the Premier League has won more than 6 games in a row this season. I'm sure I heard someone say that the other day. But yeah, I think if Liverpool can win 6 or 7 out of the last 11 games, I think they'll be there or thereabouts. You'd think anyway. Just looking at Tottenham, and I'm still not completely convinced by Newcastle or Brighton. I think it's still enough in Liverpool's hands to give me hope. I do think that they will do it, and I think they'll find a way. But yeah, there might be 1 or 2 more painful defeats, and hopefully one of those is not tonight.
Yeah, I think in any other year they might have been out of it by now. But as you say, all the other top 4 rivals just dropping points all over the place. So hopefully Liverpool won't be dropping any points tonight. But that is all we've got time for here on the Morning Bulletin today. So Matt, thanks for joining me, and we'll catch you next time.